Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. This is your girl Sophia on Rayon Couture, and today we'll be making a mermaid dress. So the things we'll be needing to make this mermaid dress is the skin tone mesh, which I'll be using for my lace. So this facing, I get chills, is close to my skin color, and it's gonna be the facing for my lace. As you can see, it's super beautiful, super beautiful. So it's close to my skin color, and also you'll be needing a mesh, which is also close to your skin color, as natural as possible. If you're a darker skin person, get a darker skin toned mesh. That is what you will need. Do not buy the exact thing you see. Buy the thing that suits your skin color, and let's get on with it. The next thing we'll be needing right here is the zipper. I always recommend you buy like a 30 inches zip or a 26 inches zip, because you want to get into that dress as comfortable as possible. So it's always nice for your zip to stop at your tailbone, just right at the bottom of your skirt, because you want to be able to slide into your dress with ease. You don't want to struggle like this, be wiggling like you want salt to get into your dress, So just get the right things, and let's get on. So right here, I am just laying down my fabric. I need to make sure it is really flat and even. So I'm gonna make it as flat as possible. And the first measurement I usually take, because this part I'm taking into consideration first, is the skirt. So I'm taking out the hip measurement, which is about 12 inches. That's including allowance, and I'm just going to go ahead and cut it. The reason why I was able to pull this apart is because of the nature of the fabric. The granules are even, so I was able to pull it apart. Depending on the fabric you're working on, if you're not sure about the granules of the fabric you're working with, just stick to using your scissors. So right there, I am also cutting the back piece of the skirt. I usually make the back piece 1 inch wider than the front piece, and I'm just going to lay it flat down so that you can see what I'm talking about. Usually the back piece is wider than the front piece, and this is because of the zip allowance. You always have to consider putting the zip allowance at the back. So as you can see, there is a bit longer than my front piece, and that is exactly what I want. So the measurement I'm taking now is the length of the skirt, and the length of the skirt is going to be shorter than the lace itself. The reason why I did this is because of the finishing of the lace. It's a beautiful trimming, so I don't need this fabric distorting the glory of the lace. So I'm just going to go ahead and open the back of the skirt. It's only the center front that doesn't need opening. It's just the back piece that needs opening. So I'm just going to go ahead and measure 4.5 inches and notch it there, and also notch the difference between the front piece and the back piece. The reason why I notch the zip area is so that you can tell this is the spot where you start making a fitting when you're joining the zip at the back. So the piece you're seeing here is the center front for the top, and I made it shorter than the usual top because it's actually going to look like a tube in the front. So the measurement I'm taking is just to make sure the fabric I'm working with is enough for the top I want to create. So I'm going to be working with imaginary lines, but I need you guys to just stick with me and trust this journey. It's very easy if you just try not to think it's complicated first. If you free your mind, you see how easy this thing is. So what I'm doing here is I'm going to assume this top is a full length, which is about 18 inches. And I'm going to take out my bust measurement, which is 10. I added 1/2 inch because of the joining at the top. And the next measurement you see me there use is on the bust measurement. The next thing I'm going to do is take my nipple to nipple measurement, which is about 8 inches. So into half is 4. I made this 4.5 inches because of the joining. You always have to consider joining for any part of a dress that you're working with. You don't want to miss that half inch, else you'll end up with a really small dress. So I went ahead to get my ruler to join this imaginary line from top to bottom, which is what you're going to be seeing here. So that 4.5 inches, I'm just going to take it all the way from the top to the bottom. The next thing I'm going to be doing is marking the breast point first, just as it, and then the underbust point as well. So from the underbust, I'm going to be taking 2.5 inches, 1 inch on the inside towards the center front, and 1.5 inches towards the exterior of the dress. I'm going to do the same thing for the waist of the dress, and I'll be taking the same measurement at the top. Remember, it is 2.5. The reason why we're doing this is the area we're going to cut out to snatch the fabric together, and then you'll see how it will be at the end. So generally, what I'm showing you now is my waist measurement, and then I added 2.5 inches, which I cut out from the middle, and then another 2.5 inches for allowance. The same thing for the underbust. I just checked the measurement and then added my 2.5 inches just to make sure that I was right on track. Most time it's always better to have an excess allowance than to have shortage in allowance. So I'm just checking it and making sure they are fine to work with. So I'm just going to go ahead and join all these lines later. So I'm measuring the bust there, as you can see. I'm really taking my time so that you'll see that there's no rush in dressmaking. You have to take your time. If you rush into it, you end up destroying it and starting afresh. So just go slow with it and you'll be fine. So I'm just going to slice off the excess from the outside of this dress, as you can see, which is exactly what I'm doing there. And then I'm going to make an armpit mark. The reason why I made this little armpit mark is for me to know this is the top of the blouse, because sometimes it can be confusing. You won't be sure if this is the lower part or the upper part. So I just always create that little semicircle on the corner there to know that that is the armpit area. So I'm just joining those markings. As you can see, the 2.5 inches, and I started the marking from the breast point. The breast point didn't take any 2.5 inches, so I'm just going to draw the 2.5 inches at the top as well, the same way I did it for the bottom. And then I'm just going to draw the lines. I really hope you can see the markings I'm doing. Some people achieve these markings with a curve set, but I'm comfortable using a ruler because I can still achieve the same result without sweating it with a curve set. So what you're seeing here is the front piece. I'm just going to get extra fabric for the back piece before I start cutting. Usually the back piece will also be wider than the front piece by 1 inch. Remember, anything you're doing at the back should have your zip allowance, which is 1 inch. Some people, like to play it safe. They might make it 1.5 inches. They might make it 2 inches, but I'm comfortable with my 1 inch allowance. So I'm just going to go ahead and start cutting those markings, but I am not going to cut the back piece the same way I cut the front. So I'm going to lift it so that you can see what I'm talking about. Yes, so I'm just cutting it. Mind you, I am cutting only the front piece. The first piece I measured, So I'm just cutting it like so, maintaining that line. I'm not going beyond or below it. I always recommend you get a big, good scissors when you're cutting fabrics so that you don't end up with dark knuckles like me. So, as you can see, it's just the first fabric I pulled apart now. Now the back piece, I'm just going to cut a straight line like so. And then I'm going to make a little wider cutting on the waist part. And the reason for that is because of the darts that I want to form. So that's going to act as a snatch for the waist because my waist is slimmer than my hip. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to now try to make this back piece and front piece the same, but I'm not going to lose that 1 inch. So I'm cutting out the excess from the zip allowance part first, like so. The reason why you are doing this is so that you don't have the back of your dress puffy. This part, I can't overemphasize how important it is. If you can see, I am maintaining that 1 inch. I am not losing it, but I'm also cutting off the excess fabric. So I'm just notching the top to know that that is the back, center back top. Because sometimes when you cut and you don't mark these things, you might end up sewing nonsense. So can you see what I've done? I folded it towards the inside and cut the excess from the outside. The reason why we don't make the back identical with the front is because the bust at the front is the reason why we cut the front piece like that. But the back is a straight back. So you just cut a straight line and take out the excesses from the sides of the fabric. And that's it. So I'm just going to go ahead to cut my lining. So I'm separating it so that you can see it. That's the back piece right there. So my lace now, I am laying it flat on the skirt, the center front skirt. The reason why I sprawled it open so wide is because I want to concentrate on the design. So I want the design to fall in such a way that the pattern will be at the middle. So that's why I had to sprawl it out like so and then cut accordingly. So this is the back piece. I went ahead and just, cut it accordingly. You can see that the lace is longer than the facing of the fabric. As you can see, the finishing of the lace there is what I want to show. That was why I did not extend the nude material all the way down. Please, when you're working with laces, ensure you have a nice sharp scissors, a heavy duty scissors that can cut your fabric comfortably. You don't want your fabric shedding in the process. So I went ahead to cut the lining for this piece as well. So the next thing I'm going to be showing you is the sleeve. As you can see, I've already cut out a piece of the lace to look like an applique, and I used it on the top part of the sleeve. So I've gone ahead to pin the edges of the trimming, and I had already run it with a machine because I wanted it to be nicely fitted down on the fabric before I go ahead and use my hand to hold it down. So this is it right here. This is the back of the fabric. As you can see, I'm showing you the machine markings. It's not going to be so visible because of the way I ran it. I ran it mainly on the heavy designed parts of the dress. So I'm going to do the same for the other sleeve. I'm just going to show you how I went ahead to fix that applique on the sleeve. So first thing I did was I marked the top of the sleeve to know the middle, the center of the sleeve. You can see that little notching on the mesh there. Then I ensured the design fell in place with the center of the sleeve, and then I just lie down flat. You can afford to use a table if you want, but I'm comfortable using my laps. So I'm just laying it flat, as you can see, tapping it so that it doesn't form any bubbles anywhere. So I'm going to pin it on strategic points of this trimming. So I first not pinned it at the bottom, then I pinned it on the protruding ends of this trimming. That is where I'm pointing right now. So I'm first going to work on one side, you know. I'm just going to pin it first, like so. That's the top and the bottom. And then I'm going to tap it down to make sure there are no bubbles inside the lace and the mesh. So as you can see, I'm laying it flat, tapping it down before I go ahead and pin the other part of the trimming, like so. See, I'm tapping it again before I use the last pin, just to ensure that it is nicely flattened on the mesh. So I'm going to go ahead and run it on the machine. So I set it on my machine. I didn't need to remove my presser foot to run this project because I have good control of my machine. So I just went ahead and ran this stuff. I didn't even know it wasn't recording. I'd already gone halfway through before I realized it wasn't recording. So this is the second half of the sleeve. As you can see, I'm taking my time, I'm not rushing it, and I'm sewing on the heavy parts of the appliques so that the machine runnings will not really show on it. You can see I'm really taking good control of my fabric, and I'm taking my time to do this. Please ensure the tension on your fabric at this time is loose. It shouldn't be too tight. Take out pins as you're working. You don't want to distort the timer on your machine, else you'll be having a very difficult time with your machine. It won't even function well once you've distorted the timer on your machine. So when I had to cut off the thread, always cut off thread on your work. Do not yank it off. Just use the scissors and cut it nice and neat. What I always do to this fabric is once I'm done sewing it, I iron it with starch, spray starch, and this allows the fabric to sit flat on the mesh so that it looks like a nicely done job. You have to iron your work all the time, depending on the lace you're working on though. You don't want to distort a lace that has stones or sequins on it or pearls. Iron might destroy the fabric. So what I'm going to show you now is the needle and thread I'll be working with, and one is longer than the other. I didn't make it equal because I want a single thread to be running over the trimming so that it won't be so visible. If I double it, it will be very obvious that I use my hands to manipulate the trimming. So I always run on a single thread. So I'm just going to go ahead and show you how I tack it. Please do not force the thread when you're operating on a mesh or a trimming like this. This is very important because there are some materials that won't forgive you. Once you yank it, it might fall apart. It will just start shedding. So just go gentle on your fabric. The sewing that you're hand sewing should not be too tight. It should be relaxed so that when you're working on it with an iron, you don't have to be stretching the fabric, forcing it to stretch out. Just go easy with the sewing, you know. As you can see, I'm not forcing it. The thread just goes in and stays. I'm not trying to make the sewing too tight. I'm not trying to make the tension too tight. The reason why I'm taking my time to show you this is because when you're you hand sewing on a job of this scale, it's gonna take time. But do not try to rush things. If you rush things in, you're gonna rush out of things and you start over again. So just take your time. So take your time, cut, take your time to measure, and you'll be happy with the results you will get. Gone ahead and joined the top and ironed it. And I just want you to see what I've done. I've opened the middle. You can put a different design if you want, but I decided to make this one like so. So I already also cut out the mesh ready, and what I'm just going to do here is just to join the mesh with the bodies by pinning it together. So I'm just showing you what I've done here, and I'm also going to show you the skirt. I'd already gone ahead to join the lining, the lace, and the face of the skirt. And as you can see, this is what we have. You must always iron your work. Don't forget that. Always, always iron your work. No matter how small, how big, or how urgent it is, try and get it as flat as possible. So this is the front piece. And I'm just going to go ahead and join everything together. I'm going to join the top to the skirt, and then I'm going to fit everything together. So I want to show you the mesh, what it looks like, and what I'm trying to explain to you. So this is the mesh. I already cut it out, and you can see it is really, really transparent. So it's the perfect mix for me. I'm just going to lay it flat and then prepare the bodies for it. So I'm just laying it flat, and this is what we have. Very transparent. So I'm just going to pin it together from the bottom and then sew everything into one piece. And the next thing I'm going to be doing is applying the appliques on the mesh. For your information, I did not join the applique to the bodies. I only used it on the mesh. So the first thing you want to do is arrange all the trimmings together on the bodies like so. So you can see I've done the back first. I'm just trying to lay it flat so that you can see what it looks like. Then I'm just going to go ahead, use pins to hold it in strategic points, and then tack them in place before I actually sew them. Mind you, I used this project only on the mesh. I did not add it to the bodies. I think the application of these pieces was the longest part of this project because the sewing together and everything was easy peasy, but the joining of all these pieces took days for me to finish. So I want you to know that, no matter how long it takes, just trust the journey, you know. Don't rush. You're not in competition. You want to get an excellent result. So always strive for excellence in your work. One thing with tailoring jobs is if you have clients that have a good eye for details, they will send you back and forth on your job. So just take your time and do it right. Also, you want to make sure that the thread you're using is an identical color with the applique that you're working with. You don't want to be using a color that is off the fabric. It will look really tacky. So as you can see here, I've used pin to hold most of the pieces together. And as you can see, I am not forcing the lace, and there is no tension. It's as loose as possible. Make sure your appliques are loose on the mesh. You don't want it to be too tight. It will wrinkle the face of the fabric, and no matter how you iron it, it will not be smooth. So make sure your thread is loose on the face of the fabric. Do not yank your material. Do not yank the work. Just let everything lie down on its own. If it wants to face north, let it face north. If it wants to face south, let it face south. You just walk around, placing other things on it if you're not satisfied with the result. I'd gotten up really early to start this project, and I used about 3 needles simultaneously. So while I'm working on the left, sometimes I'll take a break and work on the right side. Sometimes I might just sit down and decide to take a break off the dress, because I just need to distract myself sometimes, you know. So at this point, you can see what I've done. I have done a lot of joining here, but I'm still going to extend it downwards to cover the sides. But close range, this is what it looks like. This is the back as well. Really lovely. Once you iron it, you'll be impressed with the result. So I kind of made the design identical on both sides at the back. You know, you could have that royalty look. I think this is the longest part, so I already joined half of it and I'm still going to extend it downwards like so. I was working with about 4 needles on this project, or 3 needles, because while I was doing one part, I'll stop and start on another. As you can see, I have finished the back of this dress and I'm so impressed with the result. It took time, but I took my time as well to do it because I wanted an excellent result. I had to take a step back just to look at what I was doing, just to make sure that, I hadn't gone berserk on my dress. So, and I was happy with the result. As you can see, I'm checking it several times because I need to make sure I'm seeing right, because when I look at my work, sometimes I imagine what my customers will like to see. Would they like to see this? Do they want to make changes? Why would they want to make changes? Is this neat enough? Is the design all right? I take my time to make this production because lace requires patience. So I pulled the mannequin off and taken away the dress, and I sat with it and I was determined to finish it. And I think this was day 4. Yeah, I think it was day 4, day 3 or day 4, you know, just working on the chest piece. I wasn't working anywhere else, just the chest piece, and I had spent so much time. So I was determined I was going to finish this dress on this day. As you can see, sometimes you might want to take off the design and replace it, take off the design and replace it, and that is fine. Just make sure it looks beautiful in the end. That's all that matters. So I'm just pinning everything back. And like I said, this was the longest part of this dress. So, but I promise you guys will love the results. The dress came out really well. And this video was worth the wait, if you know what I mean. So I'm just going to go ahead and show you the result. So what I'm saying here is basically after I finished the appliques, I'd gone ahead to iron it. Like I said, I spray starched it and then I ironed it. The reason why I was able to spray starch this particular lace is because it doesn't have any glitter on it or stone or pearl or sequins in it. It's a dry lace. It's like a boho lace. So it was very easy to work with. I didn't have to struggle with designs on stones and stuff. No. So right after I was done with this part, I just went ahead, joined the sleeves and ironed it. And I will show you the result at the end of the video. Trust me, I had to cut off this part of this video, like it was so long. Even I got impatient. I was like, what is this? So I had to just fast forward it and, get on with it. So, and I want to say a very big thank you to those of you who took your time to watch this video. If you've recreated this video, I want to see the results. If you had challenges, what were they? Leave it in the comment section below. I will answer every single question you have. Thank you so much for watching. This is your girl, Sophia on Rayon Couture, and I will be seeing you in my next video.